to do with your first book. You're writing it for, most of us, for a fairly long time. And then in 63, Sylvia Plath, she died, but the Ariel poems came out in a review first and then later in a book. But when I saw those poems in a review, I was just really taken by what she was doing. And a lot of us were. And I went back and rewrote my manuscript. And I was thinking about that walking over or driving over here, because it's not that I don't think you'd think if you look, it's not that I wrote like her. I couldn't if I wanted to, but she had, and I'm sure you know what I mean by this, it's somebody who affects you, although you don't write like them. Maybe you never could. But I think I was talking to you about that last night, Jenny, that you felt that way, feel that way about Dickinson, and I always felt that way about Bishop, that although I could never write a sentence like her, she was very important to me, I suppose in a spiritual way or in a poetic way, but without being imitative of it, or even trying, because it's so far away, you couldn't even try. Right. But there's so many people who are important to us in that way, and Plath was one of them for me. Lowell had been an important presence once I got him, which took a while. It was really around the time he started writing life studies.
Okay, you can hear that, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I really loved what he was doing in life studies, and the second half of that book when he began to turn, and then when he wrote For the Union Dead. Those books were very important. And then I got my book taken for publication in a contest, which was a complete surprise to me.
The contest.
Well, it was at that time, really.
Right.
It was the Yale series of younger poets, which was about the only one at that time, I think, or close to it. And I was completely surprised. The guy wrote me and said, the editor was Dudley Fitz at that time. And he said, "Are you a recluse?" Because I hadn't had any poems published before that, not one. Wow. So that might encourage somebody here. Yeah. So that, you know, I remember I did get to know Lowell a bit, and I got to know Adrienne Rich because of that, and I got to know Jane Cooper from here because of that, and then they would introduce me to other people. So it did change my life. I remember walking on a Cambridge street with Lowell, and he said, "Well, did getting the book change your life?" And I said, "No, not at all." You know, along in a rainy day. And I said, "Did yours, when you got a first book, did that change your life?" "Oh, yes," he said. "I met people I never would have met otherwise, and I got a job. I have a living wage now." And I thought, well, all those things are true for me, too. But I didn't feel changed as a poet by it, you know, and that's what I had been thinking.
Yeah.
But it changed my life in good ways, because it was through Jane Cooper, of course, that I got a job here. And so I had a job. I had jobs before that, but not a good job. And, you know, meeting people whose work became more important to me. Not meeting people for connections in that sense, but just you'd get closer to their work sometimes when you met them. Sometimes you wouldn't, of course, you know. But yeah, is that somewhat of an answer?
Speaking of being changed as a poet, it seems to me that when, not if, but when you read this book, when you start with the first book, the book Jean's been referring to, the Dreambarker, the one that won the Yale Prize, there's a tone that stays, to me, into the second book, into Pilgrims. It's not such a dramatic shift into the second. But then, as I was reading, maybe you'll indulge me and let me read you this poem. Is that okay? So reading along into the first book and into the second book, and then there's this poem. I'm just going to read it before I say anything about it. It's called The Child Jung, and the epigraph says, "What will become of the boy, his father?" And the poem is spoken, it's in quotes. This stone was for ages, and will be, knows I know. And it's good, hidden. Hidden, I'm a great old doctor, whirling, an 18th century man whirling through the woods in a light green carriage, buckles on my shoes, schoolboy, the filthiest boy ever made, or blessed. Oh, curled black shivering freak, oh, my stone god quicksand eternity. I read, when I was reading through in order, I just thought, what is that? Where did that come from? So speaking as it's not that it's completely yours in the context there, but to me it's a list of what's going to happen much later.
Oh, good.
And I'm just curious as to what happened with that. If you have a sense of that, like how
If
that
I
came
knew.
in there.
Yeah. I don't know if you know Carl Jung's work at all. The book that I had been reading, and I think I've talked to Kate about this over the years, was Memories, Dreams, Reflections, which is his autobiography, which he didn't write, he spoke, and someone took it down. And for that reason, I think it's simpler to understand. For me, anyway, it was. And also, he's not talking about deeply psychological subjects so much as he is talking about his own life. Anyway, I was reading that, and that's where that poem came from. His father actually did say, this might encourage you too. His father said, what will become of this boy? You know, he's really discouraged about little Carl, and Carl remembered that, and so that's good to remember.
Right.
But he was just such an important person for me to read, but I don't remember in detail, Suzanne, about writing that poem, or if it even felt different to me.
Right.
But I'm glad it does to you.
Yeah.
I loved that book. If you haven't read it, you might have a look at it. It's Memories, Dreams, Reflections. And as I remember, it has a couple of chapters on alchemy, which are more known to him than they are to me. But I loved the book